Governor Dixon Seriake is sitting on top of billions of dollars in oil and gas and agricultural resources in Bayelsa State. But the state is asking more investors to come in to invest in tourism, oil and gas, as well as the power sector, the emerging new economy for Nigeria. Let's get this conversation talking about the state of Bayelsa's economy. This is a state that you describe rich or poor, but is it both or neither? Let's talk about this. Let's bring in the Commissioner for Trade, Industry and Investment, Kamila Okara. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Very good question. People looking at Bayelsa State from the outside look at a state that is very rich. Now, in terms of infrastructure, the story is that the state is poor.
Well, first of all, I mean, I think when you want to define states or countries that are rich or poor, the basis for defining that, to my mind, is really whether the states or countries are able to create secondary value from primary resources. And there's a wonderful book which I read not too long ago titled Why Some Nations Are Poor. And one of the points they make in that book is that being rich in resources only creates a potential. That to actually become a rich nation or a rich state, you then have to be able to build on that potential. And that's what we are focused on. Yes, we are rich in oil and gas. Yes, we have great agricultural potential. And so what we want to do is create secondary industrial value out of these primary areas of existing potential. That's our focus. So we have a lot of oil and gas. As you know, the structure of the oil and gas industry in Nigeria is that oil is actually something that is owned by the federal government. So Bayelsa State government doesn't actually own the oil and gas in the state. But what we want to do is, leveraging on the fact that it is in the state, we want to attract investors into secondary areas like petrochemicals, fertilizers, refining, and expanding the agricultural value chain.
Pardon me to break in there very quickly. We'll get back to that. But why the key question is, talk to us about this economy being managed so far by Governor Seriake Dixon.
Well, as you know, last year we had the first Bayelsa State Investment and Economic Forum, and the objective of that was to communicate to the wider world.
No, my key question, sorry, is this. Tell us about how far this state has been run in terms of the economy. Yes, this gas and other resources aren't yours. Tell us about the state of Bayelsa's economy.
Okay, let's take one key area.
And that's a state about 2 million people or so.
Yeah, so let's take one key area. One key area in the state, as you know, is the small and medium-scale sector, because this is the sector where most people who are involved in one economic activity or the other are involved in. One of the key things which we've done in that sector is opening up access to finance in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria, where we now have access to finance at in single digits. Today, now people can borrow at nothing more than 9% interest to be able to do their business. So that's one key area. We're working in partnership with the Yanagwa Chamber of Commerce, local business people. We're able to bring financing to support their businesses. So if you're talking in terms of local economy, that's one major area where the government has been very, very active in ensuring that people who do really need finance to either grow their businesses or to start their businesses are in a position to do so.
In terms of the state economy, yes, you have the people, then you have the state resources. Now, talk to us about how Governor Seriake has been managing this economy. When you talk about social infrastructure, there are very serious gaps that's been identified. Now, talk to us about wealth creation, what the government has had so far, and how this has been used to improve the economy, not just at the SME level. How much investments have you done in oil and gas, which is federal, but of course you're sitting on that. So how much have you done in these areas?
Well, you see, if you look at the economy of Bayelsa State, right, there are, I think many times there are misnomers about or misunderstandings about how the local economy operates. When people talk of oil and gas, and I make the point again, oil and gas is like a ring-fenced industry with the international oil operators working in partnership with the federal government as the partner through the NNPC. So that has no role per se in the local economy because, you know, the oil and gas sector is a highly, in terms of skills, highly demanding in terms of skills, and very limited in terms of employing capability. So in that regard, the local economy, perhaps you can say, has not had the kind of impact it should have. Where the impact would be is in when you look at the secondary areas. So for instance, there's a new company which is going to be operating in the new oil and gas free trade zone area, the Brass Free Trade Zone area. That company is called Brass Fertilizer. Now that is the kind of company that can create massive employment. So the company is working in partnership with the state government through the Bayelsa Development Investment Corporation to set up. So they're in very advanced stages in that regard. A lot of the issues that need to be addressed infrastructurally, access to gas, and all of that have been ironed out. Our role now is to facilitate that, because that can create, you know, the sort of jobs on a massive scale. The second one, again, in the brass area, is brass LNG. Again, secondary industry, because the primary production of oil and gas is really just something that has gone on from time, companies like Shell, Ajip, and so on, in partnership with NNPC. So brass LNG is another one, and that is also moving on. It's also at a fairly advanced stage in terms of getting to takeoff. Now, if those two industries, for instance, that are oil and gas based, when they take off, you are talking of job creation in the thousands. That is the sort of impact which we're working assiduously to try and achieve for the state. So that takes, you know, since we're looking at oil and gas. One other thing which, of course, is very important to us is that gas is feedstock for power. And we know that if we can massively ramp up the power input into the national grid, say in the region of, say, 5,000 to 10,000 megawatts of power into the national grid, leveraging on proximity to gas in Bayelsa State, that would again create massive jobs in power generation. So we've created a cluster, a place called the Power Hub, where we have set aside about 220 hectares of land to attract power generation companies to come and be sited. These are some of the things we want to unfold at the forum, the investment forum, which is holding on the 29th to 31st of July.
It's very interesting, but then when people think of the billions and billions of naira that Bayelsa State gets from the Federation account every month, the key question is, why is Governor Seriake asking new investors to come in? You already have the money.
The money is focused on key developmental objectives. You mentioned social infrastructure. So the money is focused on things like education, on building infrastructure. I mean, I'll give you an example. Bayelsa State is a riverine state, okay? So the cost of building a road in Bayelsa State many times is about 10 times the cost of building that anywhere else. For instance, the opening of the state, one of the key things the governor has done is to open up the 3 senatorial districts. You'd be amazed to know that up until recently, many of the communities in Bayelsa State were not accessible by road. So a lot of money goes into infrastructure. For instance, now in what you call Bayelsa East, there is a road network all the way from Yanagua that is going to end up in Brass. It's gotten as far as Nembe. Now, previously, to get to Nembe, for instance, you'd have to do a boat journey of at least an hour to an hour and a half by boat, going to the creeks. That road linkage alone, you are talking, I don't have the exact figures because I'm not involved in the works and infrastructure, but we can get at those figures. It runs into the billions. So Bayelsa State, and as you know, going back to even the pre-independence time, when the Willings Commission was set up looking at post-independence, one of the key things was that the Niger Delta was considered a special development area because of the terrain. So that's what a lot of the money goes into. Second major area is education. The governor declared an emergency in education when he came into office. And so a lot of resources have gone into setting up schools all over the state. So also in the health sector. So that's where a lot of the money goes. In terms of the growing the local economy, we are taking a different approach, which is to focus on training, enterprise training, technical training, vocational training, because when people have the necessary skills, then they can take advantage of the opportunities that are presented.
I was in Bayelsa in the November of 2012, and I wasn't too impressed with the state of the state capital.
Well, you know, I can tell you that we are also in the same position.
Because people will think that Bayelsa state capital should be the Houston of Texas in Nigeria. Why is it not so?
It will be better than the Houston.
Yeah, but that's the state that has produced the immediate past president.
Well, put it this way. Governor Dixon came into office in February of 2012. And when he came into office in February 2012, one of the things he did was he declared that Bayelsa State, Yenagoa, was going to be a huge construction site. And if you haven't visited since then, I want you to attend, be my guest at the next Investment and Economic Forum from the 29th to the 31st. And thereafter, I would want you to do an honest assessment of the Bayelsa you saw when you came in November 2012, which was a few months, maybe 6, 7 months into his administration, and what you now see when you go back, when you come 3 years plus into the same administration. There has been a massive improvement since then. Since then, the flyover has been built in the city to decongest traffic. Since then, many of the roads have been dualized. I mean, you take the Isaac Adakaboro Expressway, which was a single-lane carriageway. The dualization of that road, even, and it's not even yet complete, costs the government over 19 billion because of the state of the land, the terrain, the topography. But these are things that have gone on since he came into office. So you are right. As Bayelsans, we ourselves, many times, are not, satisfied or not happy with the current state of infrastructure. But we have to work creatively, understanding the special nature of the terrain we have, and focus a lot on growing the private sector. Because when we grow the private sector, then that partnership between the private sector and government can create the Houston, if you will, that we also desire.
The Houston of Nigeria.
The Houston of Nigeria.
Because one good thing that you folks seem to have to your advantage in Bayelsa State, it's a relatively quiet state when it comes to militancy and things like that. But what advantage of that are you
to be
taking?
fair,
yes,
these were the gains that came about when the Governor Henry Saraki Dixon came into office. So we take that for granted now. Before he came into office, don't forget that Bayelsa State 2011, 2012 was known for militancy, was known for pipeline vandalization, was known for kidnapping. But with his coming into office in 2012, he made security one of his priorities. And I'm grateful to you for actually bringing that up, because sometimes we can take that for granted now. These were one of the things that he focused squarely on and dealt with, so that today there's been huge investment in ensuring that these sorts of criminal activity have actually declined, so much so that we can now appreciate peace in Bayelsa State. These are one of the things that he did, and which for us now communicates to the wider world that Bayelsa is open for business. Bayelsa is serious about engaging with serious-minded investors to do